Hey everyone, thanks for joining us tonight, 3C Online. We're really glad that you could join. If you're watching on Instagram TV, there'll be two videos, one after. So keep that in mind. If you're on YouTube, it's just 1 3 video. So what's going to happen is you're going to see a video. Bethany's going to lead us in some worship. I'll give a talk for 10 minutes. And then once that's done at 7:30, jump onto Zoom. You should have got the Zoom code. If you have it, message us and we'll get it to you. And we'll split into small groups and talk about that. So thanks for joining us tonight. Hope you enjoy.
God.
Thanks for joining us for 3C Online. I'm really glad that you're here. Tonight and for the next few weeks, we're going to talk together about a topic: community. We believe that community is an absolute necessity for the Christian life and for growth. And during this series, we're going to look at the many characteristics that make up a strong community. Why do we look at this idea? Why, in the middle of a pandemic, will we be talking about being a community whenever it seems like we're all apart? Well, the reality is, more than ever, we need each other. More than ever, we have to believe that God has brought us together for a purpose and to do life together. D.L. Moody said this: "I have never yet known the Spirit of God to work where God's people were divided." More than ever, we need unity. More than ever, we need community. It should be at the forefront of all of our minds right now. We're desperate to see people. We're desperate to hang out again together. But whilst we can't, we want to make sure that online, as much as we can be that community that God desires. And relationship is the key. Community matters. It's a biblical thing. It's God's idea. Let me read you Acts chapter 2, verses 42 to 43. It says this: "It's the early church. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All believers were together, had everything in common." This verse is talking about the early church and how they did life together. They devoted themselves to learn more about God, to pray together. And that's the key. They did it together, not alone. And because of their belief in Jesus, they had this common thing. It's so important to have a community of Christian friends who have a relationship with Jesus like you do. As a Christian, the most important thing in each of our lives is our relationship with Jesus. But the community that you surround yourself in should be one that you can walk through this journey of life together with. That they could be the ones that you turn to when you're struggling, or who turn to you when they are struggling. But how can you expect that to happen if you don't have this common thing in your life? Christian friends are vital. Church was God's idea. The idea of people doing life together was his idea. It's how he planned it. So he brings people together in a group like this, 3C, for a purpose: to be a community, to share life together, to walk this journey together. And we're trying to create community. Online it could be tough, but we'll try our best to be here for one another and all the whole way through this. John 13, verses 34 to 35. Again, it's the words of Jesus: "A new command I give to you, to love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." This is how we love one another. It takes time, it takes commitment, and it's about doing life together. This is one of the most famous declarations to ever have come from the lips of Jesus. But before we dive into it, I want you to notice something that Jesus says. Our responsibility to love one another is a commandment. It's not a suggestion. It's not a piece of good advice. It's not one of a number of options. It's a command. Jesus is commanding us to do something. We are subject to his authority. John 14, verses 15 says this. It's the words of Jesus: "If you love me, you will keep my commandments." And John 15, verse 14. "You are my friends if you do what I command you." Of course, Jesus isn't saying that by keeping his commands you receive salvation. He's saying that if you have received salvation, you'll naturally want to keep his commands. This new commandment that Jesus spoke of in John 13, that people are to love one another, it isn't a new thing. Everyone would have been familiar with back in the day. Leviticus 19 is the first time we read about this. You don't have to turn there now. The newness of this command wasn't the command itself, but it's the pattern of how we do it. It's the way in which we are to love, due to the coming of Jesus Christ. Never in the history of mankind had God appeared in human flesh and demonstrated his love for sinful and broken people by sacrificing himself that they might live forever. Love may well have been required and seen prior to the coming of Christ, but this was a new love. Simply love changed forever when Jesus came. So we need to begin in this place, in the New Testament, asking the questions: How did Jesus love his disciples? In what ways is his love for us becoming clear? Firstly, he loved his own by spending time with them. You see that throughout the Gospels. Jesus spent time with the disciples. He spent time with his people. In Mark chapter 2, 13 to 14, he called the 12 disciples. We read this. He appointed the 12 so that they might be with him and he might send them out to preach and have authority to cast out demons. The phrase, he might be with them. Jesus didn't call the 12 disciples and then command them to go straight away. He wanted to journey with them. He wanted to do life with them. He wanted to spend time with them and be with them. And he patiently loved these men despite their struggles and their stumbles and sometimes their stupid responses. His determination to love them well meant he was incredibly patient. And he persevered through thick and thin, not allowing their faults and failures to quench the fire of his heart, to do life together. And we need to show our love to God by how we love each other. That's how we do it. Hebrews 10, 24 to 25 says this, let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works, and not neglect meeting together as some people do, but to encourage one another, especially that the day of his return is drawing near. We don't get to meet together in person, but we do online. And even in this season, it might be strange, it might be difficult, and it might even be frustrating, all the Zoom calls, but don't neglect the meeting together because it's so important. See, when I was growing up, youth wasn't just something that I came to on a Saturday or Sunday night. It wasn't something that I was just associated with. I became part of youth, and it really became part of me, and those people that I grew up with and did life with became part of me. We grew together, and it's time for this youth, it's time for 3C to get that culture of family and community, because we need one another. More than ever, we need one another. And God has brought us together as a group to do life together. The Christian life, it's not a race, it's not one about finishing first. It's about finishing. So I don't want to go ahead of others. I want to come with others. I want to journey with people. And I believe God has brought us together to journey through this Christian race together. In life, in general, because of our human nature, we are inherently selfish. It's just who we are as humans. We always think about me. Me first. I'm the most important thing. We look after ourselves, and that's not wrong. It's important, and we'll talk about how we should look after ourselves. But God commands us to love one another. The first commandment is this: love the Lord your God with all of your heart. The second is to love your neighbour as yourself. So we need to learn to see the bigger picture, where it's not just all about me. It's not just all about me, but we need to look at the bigger picture and see that it's more about we. That we get to do life together, that we'll choose others over ourselves. We, not me. I want this youth group to be constantly about us, to be constantly about each other, to belong together. We want to create a culture that says we and not me. A mentality that each of us can be a part of, where it's about us. So, first of all, it's about God, but we get to do it together. This isn't Greg's youth group. This isn't even carried up Adam's youth group, it's ours. We own it. I want you to own this. That we would be a group who would look after the needs of one another and realise that God has put us together for a purpose. And here's what I want you to do. We're going to join together on Zoom at 7:30, and we're going to get into small groups, and we're going to look at this, but I want you to take 5 minutes now, where you are by yourself, or if you're sitting with a sibling, I begin to ask the question, how can I do that? How in the midst of a pandemic, how in the midst of not seeing each other and social distancing and lockdowns, can I help others around me? How can I contribute to the group? And how can we be doing this together? 1 Thessalonians 5:11 says this, so encourage each other and build each other up. You take some time to do that.